The bridge of the Harmony's edge buzzed with the usual sounds of deep space patrol. Captain Vex drummed his 4 fingers against his command chair, watching the stars drift past on the main screen. His blue skin had a tired look to it. 3 months into their survey mission, and they had found nothing but empty space and dead rocks. "Captain," called Communications Officer Dale from her station, her insect-like eyes focused on her displays. "I'm picking up something strange." Vex straightened up. After weeks of silence, any signal was interesting. "What kind of strange?" "It's a distress beacon." "But sir," Dale paused, her antenna twitching with worry. "It's coming from the Sol system." The bridge went quiet. Everyone knew about Sol 3. It was the first planet ever given a Class 20 rating. The highest danger level possible. Nothing lived on Class 20 worlds, nothing could. Science Officer Kira looked up from her research station. Her green fur stood on end with excitement. "Captain, that's impossible. Sol 3 is a death world. The air itself kills most known life forms." Vex nodded slowly. He had read the reports. Sol 3 had crushing gravity, deadly radiation, poisonous gases in the atmosphere, and weather so violent it could destroy entire cities. The planet's surface was covered with creatures so dangerous that even the bravest explorers refused to land there. "Maybe the beacon is old," suggested Navigator Tom. His tentacles moved nervously over his controls. "Could be from one of the early survey teams." Dale shook her head. "No, sir. This signal is fresh, less than 6 hours old." Vex stood up and walked to the main screen. The Sol system appeared as a small dot of light. It looked peaceful from here. Hard to believe it contained one of the most dangerous planets in the galaxy. "Captain," Kira said quietly, "if someone is alive in that system, we have to help them." "Security." Chief Braun laughed from his position near the weapons console. His massive frame shook with amusement. "Help them? Kira, nothing survives on a Class 20 world. This is probably just a broken probe sending false signals." But Kira wouldn't give up. "What if you're wrong? What if someone is really out there, waiting for rescue?" Vex thought about it. They were 3 days away from their next scheduled stop. The distress beacon was a mystery that needed solving, and if someone was actually alive in the Sol system, they would die without help. "Dale, can you get more details on that signal?" Dale's fingers moved over her controls. "Working on it, Captain. The signal is coming from... Wait." Her eyes widened. "Sir, it's not coming from the planet. It's coming from orbit." "A ship?" Vex asked. "Negative. The signal pattern matches a standard emergency life pod." Medical Officer Thal spoke up from his corner station. His voice was always calm and professional. "Captain, if there is a survivor in that life pod, they won't last long. Most species can only survive in emergency pods for a few days." Vex made his decision. "Tom, set course for the Sol system. Maximum safe speed." Braun stepped forward. "Captain, I must object. Approaching a Class 20 system violates safety protocols. We could be putting the entire crew at risk." "Noted, Braun. But we're not landing on the planet, we're just checking orbit." The journey took 18 hours. As they got closer to Sol 3, the crew grew more nervous. The planet looked beautiful from space, blue and white and green like a jewel floating in the darkness. But everyone knew that beauty was hiding deadly secrets. "There," Dale pointed at her screen. "I've got the life pod on sensors." The main screen switched to show a small, dark object drifting in space. It was clearly damaged with burn marks along its sides and several hull breaches that had been sealed with emergency foam. "Life signs?" Vex asked. Thal checked his medical sensors. "One life form. Barely alive, but stable. Whatever species it is, it's tough to survive this long in that damaged pod." Vex studied the pod on the screen. It didn't look like any design he recognized. The hull was made from some kind of metal alloy that seemed primitive compared to standard galactic technology. "Can we bring it aboard?" Engineer Nix looked up from his station. "The pod is small enough for Bay 2. But Captain, we should scan it first. We don't know what kind of contamination it might carry." "Do it." For the next hour, they ran every scan they could think of. The results were puzzling. The pod contained no dangerous chemicals or radiation. The life form inside seemed harmless. Small, weak, with no apparent natural weapons or defenses. It's safe to bring aboard, Thal reported. Whatever this creature is, it poses no physical threat. Vex nodded. Bring it in. The crew gathered in Bay 2 as the pod was carefully moved inside the ship. Up close, it looked even more primitive. The metal was scratched and dented. The emergency seals looked like they had been applied by hand. Who builds ships like this? Nix wondered aloud. This technology is at least 50 years behind standard galactic designs. Thal approached the pod with his medical scanner. The life form is unconscious but breathing. Heart rate is slow but steady. I think it's in some kind of emergency sleep state. Can you open it safely? Yes. The pod's life support is almost dead anyway. If we don't get this creature to a proper medical bay soon, it will die. The pod opened with a soft hiss of escaping air. Inside, lying on a simple cushioned surface, was a creature unlike anything they had ever seen. It was bipedal, like many galactic species, but smaller than most. Its skin was pale and soft-looking, with no fur, scales, or natural armor. Hair covered only the top of its head. It wore simple clothing made from woven fibers. No weapons were visible. It looked so fragile, Kira whispered. Thal ran his scanner over the unconscious creature. Fascinating. Its bone structure is denser than it appears. Muscle development is significant despite the slim build. But yes, compared to most species, it does seem delicate. Braun snorted. This thing survived on a Class 20 Deathworld. Look at it. I could break it in half with one hand. Don't underestimate unknowns, Vex warned. Get it to medical. I want a full analysis. As they carefully moved the unconscious, being to the medical bay, none of them realized what they had just brought aboard their ship. They thought they had rescued a weak survivor from an impossible situation. They had no idea they had just encountered their first human. In the medical bay, the creature, the human, lay still on the examination table. Thal worked quietly, checking vital signs and taking readings. Everything about this being seemed wrong for a Class 20 survivor. Captain, Thal called over the comm. You need to see this. Vex arrived in medical to find Thal staring at his readings with confusion. What is it? This creature's body temperature runs much hotter than normal. Its metabolism is incredibly fast. And Captain... Thal paused. Its blood carries oxygen in a way I've never seen before. It's like its entire system is designed to burn energy at maximum efficiency. What does that mean? I'm not sure, but whatever world this creature comes from, it must require tremendous energy just to stay alive. No wonder it looks so fragile. It's probably burning through resources faster than most species can even process them. On the table, the human stirred slightly. Its eyes moved behind closed lids, and its breathing deepened. It's waking up, Thal said. Vex activated the comm. All senior staff to medical bay, our guest is about to wake up. As the crew gathered, none of them expected what was about to happen. They thought they were meeting a grateful survivor who would thank them for the rescue. They had no idea they were about to meet Jake, a human who would change everything they thought they knew about survival, strength, and what it meant to come from a death world. The human's eyes opened, and the real discovery was about to begin. The human's eyes opened slowly. They were a strange brown color that seemed to catch the light. For a moment, Jake lay perfectly still, taking in his surroundings. His gaze moved from face to face, studying each alien crew member with calm attention. Most rescued survivors would panic at seeing strange beings around them. They would cry, scream, or beg for help. Jake did none of these things. Instead, he sat up smoothly and smiled. Hello, he said in perfect galactic standard. Thank you for picking me up. The crew exchanged surprised looks. How did this creature know their language? You speak standard? Captain Vex asked. I speak several languages, Jake replied casually. Your translation systems helped me learn yours during the rescue. I hope you don't mind. Thal stepped forward with his medical scanner. Please lie back down. I need to run more tests to make sure you're healthy. Jake looked at the scanner with interest. That's a Mark 7 bioreader, isn't it? Nice equipment. But I feel fine, really. Now Kira was staring. How do you know about our medical equipment? I pay attention, Jake said simply. He swung his legs off the examination table and stood up. The movement was fluid and controlled, like a dancer or fighter. Wait! Braun stepped forward, his massive frame blocking the door. You need to stay here for quarantine. Standard safety rules. Jake looked up at the security chief. Braun was twice his size and covered in thick scales that could stop most weapons. His forearms ended in claws that could tear through metal. He looked like the ultimate warrior. I understand your rules, Jake said politely. But I'm not sick, and I'd prefer not to be locked up right now. It's not about what you prefer, Braun said firmly. It's about ship safety. I see. Jake nodded thoughtfully. And if I refuse to cooperate? Braun's claws extended slightly. Then I'll make you cooperate. What happened next took less than 3 seconds. Jake moved forward so fast that most of the crew didn't see it. One moment he was standing calmly by the medical table. The next moment Braun was on the floor groaning in pain. Jake stood over him, completely relaxed. Sorry about that, Jake said, helping the much larger alien back to his feet. You startled me. I was just stretching. Braun stared at him in shock. The security chief had trained for years in combat. He had fought pirates, raiders, and dangerous creatures across the galaxy. He had never been taken down so easily. How did you? Braun started to ask. Stretching, Jake repeated with an innocent smile. I've been in that pod for days. My muscles were getting stiff. Captain Vex felt a chill run down his spine. This was not normal. Survivors from Deathworlds were supposed to be broken, traumatized, grateful for rescue. They were not supposed to casually disable trained security officers while claiming to stretch. Perhaps we should all sit down and talk, Vex suggested carefully. They moved to the ship's main conference room. Jake walked between them with easy confidence, looking around with obvious curiosity. He asked questions about the ship's design, the crew's species, and their mission in space. This is a nice ship, Jake commented as they entered the conference room. Modified galactic survey class, right? But you've upgraded the engines and added extra shielding. Smart choices. Engineer Nix blinked in surprise. How can you tell all that just by walking through the hallways? I notice things, Jake said. He sat down in a chair that was too big for him but somehow made it look comfortable. It's a survival skill where I come from. Speaking of where you come from, Kira said excitedly, we'd love to hear about your world. The records say Sol 3 is completely hostile to life. Jake laughed. It was a warm, human sound that somehow made the aliens feel both comforted and nervous at the same time. Sol 3, is that what you call it? We just call it Earth. Earth, Vex repeated. Tell us about Earth. What would you like to know? Everything, Kira said quickly. How do you survive there? What do you eat? Where do you live? Jake thought for a moment. Well, Earth has about 8 billion people on it. We live in cities, towns, farms. We eat plants and animals. We work, play, raise families. Pretty normal stuff, really. The conference room went silent. 8 billion? Thal whispered. People? Dale added. You mean there are more of you? Vex asked. Oh, yes. Lots more. I'm just one guy. Jake seemed puzzled by their reactions. Did you think I was the only one? Braun leaned forward, his pride still hurt from being thrown to the floor. The galactic records say your planet kills everything that tries to live there. Earth can be dangerous, Jake agreed, but it's home. We've learned to work with it. Work with it? Kira's scientific mind was racing. How do you work with a Class 20 Deathworld? Is that what you rated it? Class 20? Jake considered this. I guess that makes sense from your perspective. Earth is pretty intense if you're not used to it. Intense? Thal pulled up his medical readings on Jake. Your planet's atmosphere contains over 20% poison gas. Jake looked confused. Poison gas? Oh, you mean oxygen. Yeah, we need that to live, don't you? Oxygen is highly corrosive, Nix explained. It burns through most materials. Most species can only handle trace amounts. Huh. Jake scratched his head. That's interesting. We breathe it all the time. Can't live without it, actually. The ship's computer chose that moment to finish its analysis of Jake's biology. Thal's medical station started beeping with alerts. Captain, Thal said, his voice shaking slightly. The computer has finished analyzing our guest. What did it find? Thal read from his screen. Bone density 3 times galactic average. Muscle fiber tensile strength off the scale. Reaction time faster than our sensors can measure. And his body temperature. Thal paused. His body temperature runs so hot it should kill him. Jake listened to this with interest. That seems about right. Humans do run pretty warm. This is impossible, Braun muttered. Nothing can be built like this and still function. I function fine, Jake said cheerfully, though I am getting a bit hungry. Do you have any food on this ship? What do you eat? Kira asked nervously. Pretty much anything. Fruits, vegetables, grains, meat. Meat? The word came out as a horrified whisper from several crew members. Sure. Beef, chicken, fish, pork, good protein. Jake noticed their expressions. You guys don't eat meat? Consuming the flesh of other creatures is... Thal struggled for words. It's considered a sign of extreme barbarism. Most civilized species evolved past that millions of years ago. Oh. Jake looked embarrassed. Sorry, I didn't know that was weird for you. We can eat plants too. Whatever you have is fine. Dale spoke quietly from her communication station. Captain, I've been scanning the Sol system while we talked. I'm picking up massive energy signatures from the planet. What kind of signatures? Cities, sir. Enormous cities and ships. Thousands of ships moving around the planet and through the system. Jake nodded. Yeah, Earth's pretty busy. We've got a lot going on. Captain Vex felt the universe shifting around him. Everything they thought they knew about Deathworlds, about survival, about the limits of life itself, was wrong. Jake, he said carefully, are all humans like you? Like me, how? Strong, fast, able to survive in impossible conditions. Jake shrugged. I'm pretty average, actually. There are humans much stronger and faster than me. I'm just a maintenance engineer, from a cargo ship. The silence that followed was deafening. Braun, the warrior who had been casually defeated by a maintenance engineer, put his head in his hands. Kira stared at Jake like he was the most fascinating scientific discovery in galactic history. Thal kept checking his medical readings, unable to believe what his instruments were telling him, and Captain Vex realized that they hadn't rescued a survivor from a death world. They had made first contact with a species that treated death worlds like home. Jake, Vex said slowly, I think we need to have a much longer conversation. Jake smiled, that friendly, innocent smile that was becoming more terrifying by the minute. Sure, Captain, I've got time. Captain Vex called for a formal meeting in the main briefing room. The entire senior staff gathered around the large table with Jake sitting comfortably at one end. He had been given a simple meal of fruits and vegetables which he ate with obvious enjoyment. This is really good, Jake said, biting into something that looked like a purple apple. We have similar fruits on Earth, but this has a nice tangy flavor. Vex cleared his throat. Jake, we need to understand more about your world. Our records show that Sol 3, that Earth, is completely hostile to life. I keep hearing that, Jake said, putting down his fruit. But I'm curious about your records. When did your people last visit Earth? Kira checked her data pad. The last survey mission was about 60 years ago. It was a long-range scan only. No one actually went to the planet. 60 years? Jake looked surprised. That explains a lot. Earth has changed quite a bit since then. Changed how? Thal asked. Well, we've cleaned up a lot of the pollution, built better cities, improved our technology, made peace with most of the dangerous animals. Braun snorted. Made peace with dangerous animals? What does that even mean? Jake thought about it. Well, take sharks for example. They used to kill maybe 10 humans per year. Now it's down to about 5. We learned to understand them better. Sharks? Dale asked nervously. Ocean predators. Big teeth. Very fast. They're actually pretty amazing creatures once you get to know them. The crew exchanged worried looks. This casual discussion of deadly predators was not helping their nerves. Let's start with basics, Vex suggested. Tell us about Earth's environment. Our records mention extreme weather. Oh, the weather can be pretty wild, Jake agreed. We get hurricanes, tornadoes, blizzards, heat waves. Last year we had a hurricane with winds over 200 kilometers per hour. 200, Nix whispered. That would destroy most cities. Yeah, it knocked down a lot of trees and damaged some buildings, but we rebuilt pretty quickly. Humans are good at rebuilding. Kira leaned forward with scientific interest. What about the gravity? Our measurements show it's much stronger than standard. Standard gravity is pretty weak, Jake said. Earth gravity keeps us in good shape. Though I have to admit, moving around your ship feels pretty easy. Like everything is lighter. Your planet's gravity is crushing, Thal explained. Most species would be flattened instantly. Jake looked genuinely surprised. Really? What kind of gravity do you normally live with? When Thal told him, Jake whistled, softly. Wow. That's like living on the moon for us. No wonder you all seem so delicate. The word delicate hung in the air. Coming from someone who looked fragile compared to most of them, it felt like an insult, but given what they had seen of Jake's capabilities, it might also be accurate. Tell us about these dangerous creatures, Braun demanded. Our scans detected massive life forms with incredible hunting abilities. Oh, you mean the big animals? Yeah. Earth has some impressive wildlife. Lions, tigers, bears, elephants, whales. Some of them are pretty dangerous if you're not careful. How do you survive with such predators? Jake shrugged. We're smarter than they are, and we stick together. Humans are pack hunters. We work as teams. Pack hunters? The term sent chills through the crew. Pack hunters were among the most dangerous creatures in the galaxy. Sure, we've always worked together to survive. That's how we became the top species on Earth. Top species? Kira asked faintly. Well, yeah. We're the apex predators. Nothing hunts humans anymore. We're at the top of the food chain. The conference room fell silent. The implications of this statement were staggering. Jake was casually describing his species as the ultimate predators on a world full of creatures that would terrify most galactic civilizations. How many of these dangerous animals exist on Earth? Vex asked carefully. Jake thought about it. Millions of species, though most of them are pretty small. Insects, fish, birds. The really big predators are less common now. Less common. We used to have a lot more. But humans have been spreading across the planet for thousands of years. The big dangerous animals learned to avoid us, or we learned to manage them. Manage them how? Thal asked, though he wasn't sure he wanted to know. Different ways. Some we hunt for food, some we protect in special areas. Some we've domesticated. Domesticated? Yeah, we've turned some of the predators into companions. Dogs, cats, horses, they live with us and help us with various tasks. Dale made a choking sound. You keep predators as pets? Dogs aren't really predators anymore. We bred them to be friendly and helpful, though I guess their ancestors were wolves, which are definitely predators. You took wild predators and changed them into companions? Nix asked in amazement. Over thousands of years, yeah. Selective breeding. We're pretty good at shaping other species to work with us. The crew stared at him. The casual way Jake described manipulating entire species was deeply unsettling. What about your technology? Kira asked, trying to change the subject. The life pod you were in seemed quite primitive. Jake laughed. That old thing? Yeah, it was just a basic emergency pod from a cargo hauler. Nothing fancy. We saved the good tech for important stuff. What kind of good tech? Faster than light travel, energy weapons, planetary defense systems. The usual stuff. You have FTL travel? Vex asked sharply. Of course. How do you think I got out here? Though I have to say, your ship's FTL system is interesting, different approach than what we use. Captain Vex felt a cold dread settling over him. Jake, how long have humans had FTL technology? Oh, about 40 years now. We've been exploring the local systems, mapping everything, learning about our neighbors. Learning about your neighbors? Sure. We've been watching the galactic civilizations for decades. Learning your languages, studying your cultures, figuring out how everything works. Dale suddenly looked up from her communication station. Captain, I'm detecting ships approaching our position. What kind of ships? Jake smiled. Probably my rescue team. I sent out a signal when I woke up, let them know I was safe. Your rescue team? Yeah, they've been looking for me since my cargo ship had problems. Should be here in a few minutes. The main screen flickered to life, showing the approaching vessels. What the crew saw made their blood run cold. 3 ships were approaching, each one larger and more advanced than the Harmony's Edge. Their hulls were sleek and dark, with no visible weapons but an unmistakable sense of barely contained power. Those are human ships? Vex asked weakly. Yep. Looks like they sent a full search and rescue team. That's nice of them. The lead ship opened a communication channel. A voice came through the speakers, speaking in the same language Jake used. Jake, this is Commander Lisa aboard the Earthstar. Are you injured? Jake activated the comm system. I'm fine, Lisa. These nice people picked me up. Very friendly crew. Copy that. Do you need immediate extraction? Jake looked around the conference room at the stunned alien faces. Actually, I think I'll stay and chat a bit longer. These folks have some interesting questions about Earth. Understood. We'll maintain position and wait for your signal. The comm channel closed. Jake turned back to the crew with that same friendly smile. So what else would you like to know about Earth? Captain Vex realized that everything had changed. They weren't dealing with a survivor from a Deathworld. They were dealing with representatives of a civilization that had been watching them, studying them, learning about them for decades. Jake, Vex said carefully, why haven't humans made contact with the galactic community before now? Jake's expression became more serious. Honestly, we weren't sure how you'd react to people like us. Humans can be pretty intimidating when you first meet us. Intimidating? Well, we're predators from a death world. We eat meat, fight constantly, and turn other species into pets. We thought you might be scared of us. Looking around the table at the terrified faces of his crew, Captain Vex realized that Jake's concerns had been entirely justified. They were scared, very scared, and Jake had just told them that he was one of the nice ones. The conversation continued for another hour, with Jake patiently answering questions about Earth and human civilization. The crew learned that humans had colonies on 12 different worlds, a space navy that patrolled 3 star systems, and trade agreements with species the galactic community had never even heard of. We prefer to stay quiet, Jake explained. Humans learned long ago that it's better to watch and understand before making big announcements. Suddenly, Dale's communication station erupted with alarms. Captain, she called out urgently. Multiple ships dropping out of FTL. They're not human. The main screen showed 6 vessels emerging from hyperspace. They were dark, angular ships with weapon ports clearly visible along their hulls. Pirates, Braun growled, his warrior instincts kicking in. Razor Syndicate by the look of their ships. Jake looked interested. Pirates? You get a lot of trouble with them out here? The Razor Syndicate controls this sector, Vex explained. Tersely, they attack survey ships, steal cargo, take prisoners for ransom. That sounds unpleasant, Jake said calmly. The lead pirate ship opened a communication channel. A harsh voice filled the bridge. Survey vessel, this is Captain Rex of the Razor Fleet. Cut your engines and prepare to be boarded. Resist and we'll blast you into scrap. Vex looked at his crew. The Harmony's Edge was not a warship. They had light shields and basic weapons, but nothing that could fight 6 pirate vessels. Options? He asked quietly. We could run, Tom suggested. Try to reach the hyperspace limit. They'd catch us before we got halfway there, Braun said grimly. We could send a distress signal, Dale offered. To who? We're 3 days from the nearest patrol. Jake stood up from his chair. Captain, if I may make a suggestion? By all means. Let me help. Braun laughed bitterly. No offense, Jake, but what can one person do against 6 warships? Probably quite a lot, actually. Jake's voice remained calm and friendly. But first, can I see your ship's technical specifications? What for? I have some ideas about improving your defensive capabilities. Nix looked skeptical. You're a cargo ship engineer. What do you know about military systems? All human engineers learn basic military applications, Jake said. It's part of our standard education. With nothing to lose, Vex authorized Jake to access their technical database. Jake spent exactly 4 minutes reading through the ship's entire technical manual. Okay, he said finally. I can increase your shield strength by about 300% and boost your weapon output by roughly the same amount. That's impossible, Nix protested. These systems are already running at maximum efficiency. Maximum efficiency for your technology. Yes, but there are some simple modifications that could help. Jake moved to Nix's engineering station and began making adjustments. His fingers flew over the controls with impossible speed and precision. What are you doing? Nix asked nervously. Rerouting power flow through secondary conduits, adjusting harmonic frequencies in the shield generators, and recalibrating the weapon targeting systems. Jake paused. Don't worry, these changes are completely reversible. Warning lights flashed across the engineering station as Jake worked. Power readings spiked, then stabilized at levels far higher than anyone had thought possible. How did you? Nix started to ask. Your species builds very safe, stable systems, Jake explained while he worked. Humans build systems that can be pushed much harder when necessary. I'm just applying some of our techniques to your equipment. The pirate ships were getting closer. Captain Rex's voice came over the comm again. Final warning, survey ship. Surrender now or face destruction. They're powering up weapons, Dale reported. Jake finished his modifications and stepped back. Okay, your defenses should hold now, but I think we can end this without much fighting. How? Let me talk to them. Vex stared at him. You want to negotiate with pirates? Not negotiate exactly. More like, explain the situation. Against his better judgment, Vex opened a communication channel. Pirate ships, this is the survey vessel Harmony's Edge. We have a diplomatic representative who would like to speak with you. Captain Rex laughed harshly. Diplomatic representative? You think you can talk your way out of this? Jake stepped forward to the comm station. Hello, Captain Rex. My name is Jake. I'm a human. There was a long pause. A what? A human. From Earth. Sol 3, you probably call it. Another pause. Longer this time. That's impossible. Nothing lives on Sol 3. Actually, about 8 billion of us live there, and we really don't like pirates. You're lying, Jake sighed. I was hoping we could settle this peacefully, but if you insist on fighting... He turned to Captain Vex. Can you open a channel to my rescue ships? Of course. Lisa, this is Jake. We have a small pirate problem here. 6 ships, Razor Syndicate. Commander Lisa's voice came through clearly. Copy that, Jake. Do you want us to handle it? No, I think I can manage, but stay ready in case things get complicated. Jake closed the channel to the human ships and reopened the one to the pirates. Captain Rex, you have 30 seconds to leave. This is your only warning. Rex's laughter was loud and mocking. One cargo engineer thinks he can threaten the Razor Syndicate? You're insane. Probably, Jake agreed cheerfully. But I'm also serious. 20 seconds now. All ships, attack formation, Rex shouted. Destroy that survey vessel, the 6th pirate. Ships moved into attack position and opened fire. What happened next would be talked about in spacer bars for years to come. Jake's modifications to the Harmony's Edge worked exactly as promised. Enemy fire splashed harmlessly off shields that glowed brighter than stars. The survey ship's weapons, now operating at impossible power levels, struck back with devastating accuracy. But the real surprise came when Jake calmly walked to the transporter pad. Jake, what are you doing? Vex called out. Going over there to end this. Jake held up a simple maintenance tool he had borrowed from engineering. Can someone beam me to their lead ship? You want to board a pirate vessel? Alone? With a plasma cutter? It's just basic maintenance work, Jake said with that terrifying, innocent smile. I'm good at fixing problems. Before anyone could stop him, Jake activated the transporter himself. For the next 10 minutes, the crew of the Harmony's Edge watched their sensors in stunned silence. Jake's life sign moved through the pirate ship like a force of nature. Weapon signatures appeared and disappeared, bulkheads were breached, power systems failed and came back online, and one by one the pirate crew's life signs went from active to unconscious. Finally, Jake's voice came over the comm from the pirate ship's bridge. Captain Rex has decided to surrender. So have his crews. They're all unharmed, just taking a little nap. The 5 remaining pirate ships had stopped firing. Their weapons powered down and distress beacons began broadcasting surrender signals. 20 minutes later, Jake transported back to the Harmony's Edge. He looked exactly the same as when he left. Calm, friendly, not even breathing hard. All done, he announced. They won't be bothering anyone for a while. Thal quickly scanned Jake with his medical equipment. You're not injured at all. Why would I be injured? They were just pirates. Just pirates? Braun stared at him. The Razor Syndicate are some of the most dangerous criminals in the galaxy. They've been terrorizing shipping lanes for 15 years, Jake shrugged. They weren't very good at fighting. Too much reliance on weapons, not enough focus on tactics. Captain Vex looked at the 6 disabled pirate ships drifting in space. Jake, what exactly did you do over there? Standard crowd control techniques, nothing fancy. I disabled their weapons, shut down their engines, and encouraged them to reconsider their career choices. In 10 minutes? I work fast when I need to. Dale looked up from her sensor readings. Captain, I'm detecting galactic patrol ships approaching. Looks like someone called for help. That would be me, Jake said. I sent a message to the local authorities while I was on the pirate ship. They'll want to arrest the Razor Syndicate crew. Piracy is illegal, right? 3 galactic patrol vessels dropped out of hyperspace and began taking the pirates into custody. Their commander sent a message thanking the crew of the Harmony's Edge for their assistance in capturing one of the most wanted pirate gangs in the sector. As they watched the patrol ships work, Kira asked the question everyone was thinking. Jake, how strong are humans compared to other galactic species? Jake considered this seriously. Honestly, I'm not sure. We don't usually compare ourselves to other species. But if today was any indication... He paused. Maybe we're a bit stronger than average. Thal checked his medical readings again. Throughout the entire fight, Jake's heart rate had barely increased. His stress levels remained completely normal. As far as his body was concerned, disabling 6 ships full of armed pirates had been as easy as taking a walk. A bit stronger than average, Vex repeated quietly. Yeah, though like I said, I'm pretty typical for a human. We're just maintenance engineers and cargo haulers mostly. The crew of the Harmony's Edge sat in stunned silence, trying to process what they had witnessed. If Jake was a typical human, and humans were just maintenance engineers and cargo haulers, then what were their actual soldiers like? It was a question none of them really wanted answered. The news of the Razor Syndicate's capture spread through galactic communication networks faster than light itself. Within hours, every major news service was reporting the same impossible story. A single being from an unknown species had defeated 6 pirate ships without weapons, armor, or backup. Captain Vex sat in his quarters reading the incoming messages with growing amazement. The Galactic Council wanted a full report. Military commanders were requesting detailed tactical analysis. Scientists were demanding biological data on the new species. Captain, Dale's voice came over the intercom. You need to see this. Vex made his way to the bridge where the crew had gathered around the main communication station. Jake stood nearby, looking mildly embarrassed. What's happening? Messages. Sir, hundreds of them. Everyone wants to know about humans. The main screen showed a flood of incoming communications. Military officials, scientific institutions, government representatives, and news agencies from across the galaxy were all trying to contact the Harmony's Edge. They're calling humans the Deathworld warriors, Kira reported, reading from her datapad. Some news services are claiming we've discovered the galaxy's most dangerous species. Jake winced. That's exactly what we were worried about. What do you mean? Vex asked. This is why humans haven't made contact before. We knew this would happen. Jake gestured at the screen full of messages. Everyone would either be terrified of us or want to use us as weapons. Before Vex could respond, the ship's proximity alarm started sounding. 3 more ships were dropping out of hyperspace. More pirates? Braun asked, reaching for his weapons. No, Dale said, checking her sensors. These are different, much bigger. And they're broadcasting diplomatic codes. The lead ship was massive, easily 10 times the size of the Harmony's Edge. Its hull was pristine white with gold markings, the colors of the Galactic Council. This is Admiral Stone of the Council Fleet, a stern voice announced. We're here to escort the human representative to the Council chambers for immediate debriefing. Jake sighed deeply. Here we go. You don't sound happy about this, Vex observed. Would you be? They want to parade me in front of the Council like some kind of exotic animal. Ask me how humans fight, what our weaknesses are, whether we're planning to conquer anyone. The comm system activated again. Human representative, prepare for immediate transport to our flagship. Jake shook his head. Not happening. He activated the communication system himself. Admiral Stone, this is Jake. I appreciate the invitation, but I'll have to decline. This is not a request. The Council has declared this a matter of galactic security, and I've declared it a matter of human security. My people don't respond well to threats or forced interviews. There was a long pause before the Admiral spoke again. Are you refusing a direct order from the Galactic Council? I'm explaining that humans value their independence. If the Council wants to meet with us, they can send a proper diplomatic request through official channels. What official channels? Your species isn't recognized by galactic law. Jake's friendly demeanor became noticeably cooler. Admiral, I suggest you be very careful with your next words. Humans may not be part of your galactic community, but we exist whether you recognize us or not. Captain Vex felt the temperature in the room seem to drop. For the first time since meeting Jake, he sensed something dangerous beneath the human's calm exterior. Is that a threat? Admiral Stone demanded. It's a fact. Humans have been watching galactic civilization for decades. We know how your politics work, how your military operates, and how your economies function. We've chosen to stay independent. Don't try to force us to change that choice. The Council ships moved into what looked like an attack formation. Weapon ports opened along their hulls. Stand down immediately or face the consequences, Admiral Stone ordered. That's when Jake's rescue ships decided to make themselves known. The 3 human vessels had been waiting quietly in the shadow of a nearby asteroid. Now they moved into the open and their true size became apparent. Each ship was larger than the Council flagship, with sleek, dark hulls that seemed to absorb light. Admiral, Commander Lisa's voice came over the comm. This is the Earth Defense Force. You have threatened a human citizen. Stand down immediately. Earth Defense Force? Admiral Stone sounded confused. We have no record of any Earth military. That's because we didn't want you to have records. But since you forced the issue, let me explain the situation. You are currently facing 3 Class A warships of the Human Space Navy. Each ship carries enough firepower to level a small moon. You have 30 seconds to withdraw your weapons. Admiral Stone's response was swift and predictable. Fire on. Those ships. Show them the power of the Galactic Council. The Council ships opened fire with everything they had. Energy beams, missile salvos, and plasma cannons filled space with deadly light. None of it touched the human ships. The Earth vessels moved like dancers, avoiding every shot with impossible grace. Their defensive shields didn't even activate. They simply weren't where the weapons fired. Then they fired back. 3 precise energy beams lanced out from the human ships. They didn't target weapons or engines or life support. They targeted the communication arrays of each Council vessel. In less than 5 seconds, the entire Council fleet was deaf and mute. Message sent and received, Commander Lisa announced calmly. Admiral, your ships are now completely cut off from the galactic communication network. You can sit here in silence, or you can leave. Your choice. The council ships hung in space for several minutes, clearly debating their options. Finally, they began moving away from the human vessels. "We'll be back," Admiral Stone transmitted on emergency frequencies. "The council will not be threatened. The council will do what it thinks is best," Commander Lisa replied. "But next time, try diplomacy first." As the council ships jumped to hyperspace, Jake turned to Captain Vex with an apologetic expression. "Sorry about that. I was hoping we could avoid this kind of drama." "Jake," Vex said slowly, "are humans at war with the Galactic Council?" "Not yet. But if they keep acting like that, it's a possibility." Kira looked up from her science station where she had been analyzing the human ships. "Jake, those vessels, their technology is centuries ahead of anything in our databases." "We're pretty good engineers," Jake said modestly. "No, you don't understand. Your ships didn't just avoid Council weapons. They predicted where those weapons would fire and moved before the trigger was pulled. That requires computational power beyond anything we thought possible." Jake shrugged. "Like I said, we pay attention. Humans are very good at noticing patterns." Commander Lisa's voice came over the comm again. "Jake, are you ready to come home?" Jake looked around the bridge of the Harmony's edge, studying each crew member's face. They all looked back at him with mixtures of fear, awe, and curiosity. "Actually, Lisa, I think I'll stay here a bit longer. These folks have been very kind to me, and I'd like to return the favor." "Copy that. We'll maintain position until you're ready." Jake turned to Captain Vex. "If you don't mind, I'd like to help you file your report about this incident. Make sure the facts are presented correctly." "What facts?" "That humans are peaceful unless threatened, that we prefer cooperation to conflict, and that we're willing to work with the galactic community, but only as equals, not as subjects." Vex nodded slowly. "And if the council doesn't accept those terms?" Jake's smile was as friendly as ever, but something in his eyes had changed. "Then they'll learn what humans are really capable of when we stop being nice." Over the next several days, Jake helped the crew of the Harmony's Edge prepare their report. He patiently answered questions, shared information about human technology and culture, and even helped Nix improve several ship systems. "You know," Kira said on his last day aboard, "you're not what we expected when we rescued you." "What did you expect?" "A grateful survivor. Someone weak and traumatized who would be thankful for rescue." Jake laughed. "Well, I am grateful. You did save my life after all. But you're not weak." "No," Jake agreed. "Humans aren't weak. We can't afford to be." "Because you come from a death world? Because we made it into something better. Earth used to be a dangerous place. Now it's home to 8 billion people who work together, explore the stars, and protect each other. That doesn't happen by being weak." When Jake finally left to rejoin his rescue ships, the crew gathered to watch his departure. He shook hands with each of them, thanked them again for their kindness, and made them promise to visit Earth someday. "You'll like it there," he assured them. "It's really quite peaceful now." As the human ships prepared to leave, Jake sent one final message to the Harmony's Edge. "Captain Vex, please make sure your report includes this. Humans are not monsters. We're not conquerors or destroyers. We're just people who learn to survive in a tough universe, but we're also not victims. We don't surrender. We don't give up. And we don't let bullies push us around. The galaxy is big enough for all of us to share peacefully. But anyone who tries to take that peace away from us will discover why Deathworlds produce dangerous neighbors." The human ships vanished into hyperspace, leaving the crew of the Harmony's Edge alone with their thoughts. Captain Vex filed his report exactly as Jake had requested. Within weeks, it had spread throughout the galactic community, sparking The war room aboard the Galactic Council's flagship Harmony had never felt so small. Ambassador Krell pressed his six-fingered hands against the holographic display, watching red markers spread across the star map like a disease. Each marker represented a fallen world, another system consumed by the Vorthon Empire's relentless advance. 73%, muttered General Voss, the Centaurian military commander. His blue skin had turned pale with stress. They have taken 73% of our defended space in just 2 years. Krell's antennae twitched with anxiety. The Altarian Federation had been among the first to fall, his home world now a mining colony for Vorthon war machines. Only his diplomatic status had saved him from the slave camps that held billions of his people. The Vorthons fight like machines, said Commander Irol from her floating chair. The aquatic Nereid's gills fluttered rapidly, a sign of deep distress. They do not negotiate. They do not show mercy. They simply consume and move forward. The more assembled leaders of the remaining free worlds stared at the display. The Vorthon Empire had appeared from the galactic rim 3 years ago, their black ships emerging from unknown space like a nightmare made real. They had swept through the outer colonies with mechanical precision, turning entire populations into workers and soldiers for their war effort. "We have tried everything," said Elder Thane, his ancient voice barely above a whisper. The keeper of the archives had lived for 800 years and had never seen anything like this. "Our combined fleets cannot match their numbers. Our technology cannot compete with their weapons. They rebuild faster than we can destroy them." Krell straightened his tall, thin frame. "There is one option we have not explored." The room fell, silent. Every species in the galaxy knew what he meant, but none wanted to speak it aloud. "The humans," General Voss said finally. "The humans," Krell confirmed. Commander Irel's tentacles writhed with discomfort. "They are a young species, barely 500 years in space. What could they possibly offer that we cannot provide ourselves?" "Unpredictability," Krell replied. "Every battle we have fought, the Vorthons have anticipated our moves. They study our tactics, learn our patterns, and adapt faster than we can change. But humans are different." Elder Thane accessed his archives with a thought. The human military consists of approximately 50 million active personnel across their various planetary systems. Their technology is adequate. Their weapons are effective but not superior to ours. Their ships are well designed but not revolutionary. "Then why?" Commander Irel began. "Because they do not fight like us," Krell interrupted. "I have studied their history. When humans wage war, they do not follow the rules we consider natural. They adapt. They improvise. They turn their entire civilization into a weapon when threatened." General Voss pulled up human military records. Their largest single military operation involved only 12 million personnel. By galactic standards, they are a minor military power. By galactic standards, yes, Krell agreed. But we are not dealing with a galactic standard enemy. The Vorthons expect us to fight like civilized beings. Perhaps we need to fight like humans. The debate continued for hours. Some argued that bringing humans into the conflict was desperate madness. Others pointed out that desperate madness might be exactly what they needed. The Vorthons had conquered everything conventional wisdom could throw at them. Finally, Elder Thane cast the deciding vote. "We will approach Earth. We will request standard military assistance, 50,000 troops, following established galactic warfare protocols. If they refuse, we lose nothing. If they accept, perhaps we learn something new about warfare." 3 days later, Krell's shuttle descended through Earth's atmosphere toward the planetary capital. The blue and green world looked peaceful from orbit, but Krell knew better. Human worlds always looked peaceful until you understood what lay beneath the surface. The United Earth Government's military headquarters was a simple complex of white buildings surrounded by gardens. It seemed almost laughably modest compared to the grand military installations of other species. Krell wondered if this was another example of human unpredictability or simply human efficiency. Admiral Hayes met him at the entrance. The human was tall and lean, with gray hair and sharp eyes that seemed to catalog everything they saw. His uniform was plain, functional, without the decorative elements that marked military rank in most galactic cultures. "Ambassador Krell," Hayes said, extending his hand in the human greeting gesture. "I understand you have a problem." Krell shook the offered hand, still adjusting to human directness. "Admiral Hayes, the Galactic Council faces extinction. We request Earth's military assistance under the Mutual Defense Accords." They walked through corridors lined with simple displays showing Earth's military history. Krell noticed that humans seemed to commemorate their defeats as much as their victories, something he had never seen in another species. "The Vorthon Empire has superior numbers and technology," Krell explained as they entered a conference room. "We need 50,000 troops to reinforce our defensive lines at the Kepler front. Standard deployment, following galactic warfare protocols." Admiral Hayes listened without interruption, occasionally asking questions about Vorthon tactics and capabilities. His questions were different from what Krell expected. Less about military strength and more about Vorthon society, their supply chains, their communication methods. 50,000 troops, Hayes repeated when Krell finished, following galactic warfare protocols. "Yes, Admiral. We understand this is a significant commitment, but—" "Oh, we'll help," Hayes interrupted. "But I think there's been a misunderstanding about what kind of help you're going to get." Krell's antennae twitched with confusion. "I do not understand." Hayes smiled, and Krell felt a sudden chill. He had studied human expressions, and this particular smile reminded him of a predator that had just spotted prey. "You're thinking about this wrong, Ambassador. You're asking for troops to fight a war. But humans don't fight wars. We solve problems, and the Vorthon Empire has just become our problem." "I still do not understand the distinction." "You will." Hayes stood and walked to a wall display showing Earth's industrial capacity. "Tell me, Ambassador, when the Vorthons conquer a world, what do they do with the population?" "They turn them into workers and soldiers for their war effort." "Exactly. They treat war as a manufacturing process. Build more ships, recruit more. Soldiers conquer more worlds, repeat. It's efficient, predictable, and very effective against enemies who fight by the rules." Krell felt his breathing quicken. "What are you suggesting?" "I'm not suggesting anything. I'm telling you what's going to happen." Hayes turned back to face him. "In 72 hours, Earth will begin deployment. You asked for 50,000 troops following galactic warfare protocols. What you're going to get is humanity unleashed." The Admiral's words sent a shiver through Krell's entire body. "How many troops will you send?" "Troops?" Hayes laughed, but there was no humor in the sound. "Ambassador, you're still thinking like a galactic citizen. We're not sending troops. We're sending civilization." Before Krell could ask what that meant, alarms began sounding throughout the building. Hayes listened to his communication device, then smiled that predatory smile again. "Excellent timing. Our deep space sensors just detected a Vorthon scout fleet moving toward the Kepler front. They'll arrive in about 6 days." He looked at Krell with eyes that suddenly seemed very cold. "Just enough time for us to say hello properly." As Krell left Earth's surface, he watched through his shuttle's viewport as the peaceful blue world below began to change. Lights appeared where none had been before. Ships launched from hidden facilities. The planet's entire electromagnetic signature shifted as if some sleeping giant was waking up. He realized with growing unease that the Galactic Council had made a terrible mistake. They had asked for help from humans, but they had no idea what humans considered helpful. As his shuttle jumped to hyperspace, Krell wondered if they had just saved the galaxy or doomed it to something worse than the Vorthons. Behind him, Earth continued its transformation, and Admiral Hayes began making calls that would change the course of galactic history forever. The Kepler front had become a graveyard of starships. Admiral Koss of the Altarian Defense Fleet stood on the bridge of his flagship, watching the latest battle reports scroll across his screens. 3 more worlds had fallen to the Vorthons in the past week. The enemy advanced with the steady rhythm of a machine, crushing everything in their path. "Sir," his communications officer called out, We're receiving a transmission from the human fleet. Koss straightened. The humans had arrived 2 days ago and nobody quite knew what to make of them. Put them through. The holographic display flickered to life, showing a middle-aged human woman in a simple gray uniform. Her name tag read Kane, and her rank insignia marked her as a general. Admiral Koss, this is General Kane. We're ready to begin operations. Understood, General. My staff has prepared deployment coordinates for your forces. We'll integrate your 50,000 troops into our defensive. I'm going to stop you right there, Admiral. Kane's voice was calm but firm. We're not integrating with your defensive lines. Koss felt his stomach drop. General, the Galactic Council specifically requested military assistance. They're getting it, just not the way they expected. Kane gestured off-screen. We've brought 200,000 personnel to the Kepler front. 200,000? Koss struggled to process the number. That's 4 times what we requested. Your logistics alone are being handled. Admiral, I need you to understand something. When humans commit to helping someone, we don't do it halfway. The Vorthons have made themselves our problem, and we solve our problems completely. Before Koss could respond, his tactical officer spoke up. Sir, I'm reading massive deployment activity from the human ships. Hundreds of shuttles launching simultaneously. Koss watched his screens in growing confusion. The human deployment looked nothing like standard galactic military operations. Instead of organized military units moving to predetermined positions, he saw what looked like controlled chaos. General Kane, he said slowly, what exactly are your people doing? Kane smiled. Getting to work. On the surface of Kepler 7, the last major world before the Vorthon advance, something unprecedented was happening. Tom Bradley, a mechanic from Detroit, stepped off a human transport and immediately began examining a damaged Altarian tank. This is good engineering, he told. His partner Maria Santos, a former teacher from Brazil. Simple, reliable, easy to fix, but they're thinking too small. Maria nodded, pulling out a tablet that showed intercepted Vorthon communications. According to this, the Vorthons expect us to use these tanks the same way the Altarians do. Direct, frontal assault supporting infantry. Yeah, well, the Vorthons have never met humans before. Tom grinned and popped open the tank's engine compartment. Hand me that plasma cutter. We're going to make some modifications. Across the planet, similar scenes were playing out. Jake Morrison, a programmer from Seattle, sat in what had been an Altarian command post, his fingers flying across multiple keyboards. Beside him, Lisa Chen, a high school history teacher, studied Vorthon tactical reports. Their command structure is completely hierarchical, Lisa observed. Orders flow down from the top, with no room for individual initiative. Perfect, Jake replied without looking up from his screens. I'm already inside their communication network. Basic encryption, too. They probably figured no one would be crazy enough to try hacking them during active combat. They were right about the crazy part, Lisa laughed. But they didn't account for humans. Admiral Koss watched the human activities with growing alarm. General Kane, your people are not following any recognizable military doctrine. They're scattered across the entire planet without proper command structure or defensive positions. That's correct, Kane replied calmly. That's tactically insane. When the Vorthons attack, Admiral, let me ask you something. In all your battles, with the Vorthons, have you ever won? Koss felt his pride sting. We have achieved tactical victories, but you've never won. You follow proper military doctrine, maintain proper command structures, fight according to the rules of civilized warfare, and you lose. Every time. The Admiral had no answer for that. The Vorthons are machines, Admiral. Efficient, predictable machines. They've studied every species in the galaxy and learned exactly how to beat them. But they've never studied humans because humans have never been in a galactic war before. On the bridge of the Vorthon command ship Conquest, war leader Drex studied the tactical displays with satisfaction. The latest human world would fall within days, and then the path to the galactic core would be open. War leader, his intelligence officer reported, we have detected unusual activity on Kepler 7. Explain. The enemy has received reinforcements, a species called humans. Their deployment patterns are irregular. Drex examined the data. The humans had scattered across the planet instead of concentrating their forces. They showed no clear command structure or defensive strategy. This species is obviously primitive. They do not understand proper military tactics. Should we adjust? Our attack plan? No. We will proceed as scheduled. Primitive tactics will not save them. Back on Kepler 7, the human preparations continued. In a converted warehouse, Dr. Emily Foster, a biochemist, worked alongside Captain Rex Miller, a former Marine-turned-farmer. The Vorthans use a standardized atmospheric mix in their ships, Emily explained, showing Rex her analysis. Very convenient for them. Also very convenient for us. Rex studied the chemical formulas on her screen. You're talking about biological warfare. I'm talking about crop dusting, Emily corrected. Just with different crops. Meanwhile, musician David Park sat in a broadcasting station with communications specialist Anna Rodriguez. They were hijacking Vorthon entertainment channels, replacing propaganda with something much more dangerous. Music is universal, David explained as he adjusted his equipment. Every species responds to rhythm and harmony, but the Vorthans have suppressed artistic expression in their conquered populations, so we're giving it back to them, Anna added, her fingers dancing across the transmission controls, along with some very specific suggestions about what they should do with their freedom. The Vorthan attack came at dawn, exactly as their doctrine predicted. Massive ships descended from orbit, disgorging thousands of soldiers in perfect formation. They advanced on the human positions with mechanical precision, and found nothing. The humans had abandoned their scattered positions during the night, vanishing like ghosts. Vorthon forces found empty buildings, abandoned equipment, and no sign of organized resistance. Where are they? War leader Drex demanded. His answer came from everywhere at once. Human-modified tanks emerged from underground tunnels firing weapons that shouldn't exist. Vorthon communication networks crashed as Jake's viruses spread through their systems. Their atmospheric processors began producing Emily's custom chemical mixtures. Their entertainment channels filled with David's revolutionary music. But the real surprise came when Vorthon soldiers began collapsing not from weapons fire, but from laughter. Lisa had discovered something the Vorthans had hidden even from themselves. Their conquered species had developed a rich tradition of humor, mocking their oppressors. Now that humor was being broadcast directly into Vorthon helmets. General Kane watched the chaos from her mobile command post. Admiral Koss, are you seeing this? The Altarian admiral stared at his tactical displays in amazement. General, this is impossible. Your people are everywhere and nowhere. They're using weapons that don't exist, tactics that make no sense, and somehow they're winning. Admiral, let me explain something about humans. We don't have a military separate from our civilization. When we go to war, our entire society goes to war. That mechanic fixing your tank? He spent his whole life making broken things work better. That teacher studying Vorthon tactics? She spent her career figuring out how people think and learn. That programmer hacking their networks? He's been breaking computer systems since he was 12 years old. Kane paused, watching another Vorthon formation scatter in confusion. You asked for 50,000 soldiers. We sent you 200,000 humans, teachers, mechanics, farmers, programmers, musicians, scientists, people who have spent their lives solving problems. And right now, the Vorthans are a problem. That needs solving. On his command ship, war leader Drex faced something no Vorthon had ever encountered. Total tactical confusion. His forces were trapped in a battle that followed no rules he understood, fighting an enemy that seemed to be everywhere and nowhere at once. Recall all forces, he ordered. We will regroup and analyze this new threat. But as his ships tried to retreat, they found their engines sabotaged, their life support systems compromised, and their crews humming strange, rebellious songs that made them question everything they had been taught. The humans had arrived, and the galaxy would never be the same. The Vorthon Empire's capital world of Dominus had stood unconquered for 3 centuries. Its black towers stretched toward the stars, monuments to endless conquest and rigid order. But now, for the first time in its history, those towers were. Dark War Supreme Vex stood in his command center, watching the empire he had built crumble in real time. Red warning lights flashed across every display. System after system reported the same impossible message. Total operational failure. Status report, he commanded, though he dreaded the answer. Intelligence Officer Krim stepped forward, his usual confidence replaced by confusion. War Supreme, we have lost contact with 63% of our fleets. Production on 41 worlds has stopped completely. 17 conquered systems have declared independence. How many humans are responsible for this chaos? Sir, our best estimate is still 200,000 humans spread across our territory. But, Krim hesitated. But what? Sir, they are not acting like any military force we have encountered. They appear to be conducting some form of systematic conversion of our empire. Vex felt his jaw tighten. Explain conversion. They are not destroying our infrastructure, War Supreme. They are changing it. Our weapons factories now produce farming equipment. Our propaganda centers broadcast education programs. Our military training facilities have become schools. On the industrial world of Mechanicus, Tom Bradley stood before a massive assembly line that had once manufactured Vorthon battlecruisers. Now it was producing something entirely different. Prefabricated housing units for refugee populations. See, Tom explained to the Vorthon factory manager. The same machines that build weapons can build homes. Better homes, actually, because they're designed to last instead of to destroy. Manager Cax stared at the production line with growing amazement. But we have always built weapons. It is our purpose. Says who? Tom asked simply. The question hit Cax like a physical blow. In his entire life, no one had ever asked him that question. The war leaders, the high command, the empire. And who told them? Tom continued, his voice gentle but persistent. Who decided that your only purpose was to build weapons? Cax struggled to answer. He had never been encouraged to think about such things. I do not know. Then maybe it's time to find out. Tom smiled and handed him a tablet. Here's the production schedule for next week. We're building housing for the Altarian refugees from Zerion Prime. You want to help? For the first time in his life, Cax felt something he had no name for. Later, he would learn that humans called it pride in meaningful work. Meanwhile, on the communication hub world of Nexus, Jake Morrison had achieved something thought impossible. He had hacked the Vorthon Empire's collective consciousness. Every Vorthon was connected to the central network, a system that provided constant updates, orders, and propaganda. Jake hadn't destroyed the network. That would have been crude. Instead, he had simply changed what it was teaching. Check this out, he said to his partner, Ana Rodriguez, the communications specialist. Instead of today's war objectives, I'm broadcasting today's learning objectives. Ana looked at his screen and laughed. You're turning the entire empire into a classroom. Exactly. And the best part is they think it's coming from their own leadership. I've got war leaders across the galaxy accidentally teaching their troops about art, literature, and philosophy. The results were immediate and dramatic. Vorthon soldiers who had never questioned orders began asking why they were fighting. Commanders who had never considered alternatives began exploring peaceful solutions. An empire built on unthinking obedience was learning to think. Dr. Emily Foster had moved beyond individual targets to ecosystem-level intervention. The biochemist was working with local populations to transform entire planets from military installations into functioning societies. On the mining world of Extractus, she walked through tunnels that had once echoed with the sounds of forced labor. Now they hummed with something entirely different, voluntary cooperation. The key, she explained to Elder Vryn, a Centaurian who had been enslaved for 3 years, is understanding that the Vorthons are as much prisoners of their system as you were. But they chose to enslave us, Vryn protested. Did they? Or were they taught from birth that slavery was natural and necessary? Emily gestured to a group of Vorthon overseers who were now working alongside their former prisoners. Look at them now. When given the choice between oppression and cooperation, which do they choose? Vryn watched in amazement as former enemies shared tools and knowledge. They choose cooperation, but why? Because deep down every intelligent being wants to create rather than destroy. The Vorthans just forgot that truth. We're helping them. Remember, the transformation was accelerating beyond anything the humans had expected. Lisa Chen, still working her teaching magic on Xerion Prime, received a message that made her stop and stare. General Kane, she called over her communication device. You need to see this. Kane's voice crackled through the speaker. What is it, Lisa? I just received a formal request from 3 Vorthon war leaders. They want to attend my classes on conflict resolution. War leaders? Not just any war leaders. These are sector commanders responsible for conquered territories. They want to learn how to govern through cooperation instead of force. Kane was quiet for a moment. Lisa, do you realize what this means? It means the Empire isn't just collapsing. It's evolving. But the most dramatic change was happening on Dominus itself. David Park, the musician, had achieved something that no military force had ever accomplished. He had reached the Vorthan capital, not through invasion or bombardment, but through song. His music had spread through the Empire's communication networks, like a virus of hope. Now it was playing in the halls of power itself, carried by Vorthon citizens who had heard it and couldn't stop humming it. War Supreme, Officer Krim reported, his voice shaking. There are crowds gathering in the central plaza. Vex looked at the security monitors and saw something that defied all understanding. Thousands of Vorthons had gathered outside the government buildings, but they weren't rioting or protesting. They were singing. What do they want? Vex demanded. Sir, they want to talk to you. Talk about what? About the future, sir. They want to know what comes after conquest. Vex stared at the monitors in growing panic. His empire was built on the principle that Vorthons didn't ask questions. They followed orders. But now his own people were questioning everything. Deploy security forces, he ordered. Sir, the security forces are in the plaza. They're singing too. At that moment, Maria Santos, the former teacher from Brazil, walked into the command center. She had arrived on Dominus 3 days ago, not as a conqueror, but as an educator. War Supreme Vex, she said politely. My name is Maria Santos. I'm here to offer you a choice. Vex's guards moved to block her, but she raised her hands peacefully. I'm not armed. I'm not here to fight. I'm here to teach. Teach what? Vex snarled. How to be something more than a conqueror. Maria gestured toward the monitors showing the singing crowds. Your people are ready to learn. The question is, are you? Vex stared at this small human woman who had somehow walked into the heart of his empire without firing a shot. You think you can convert me with your alien philosophy? I think you're already converted, Maria replied gently. You've spent the last hour watching your empire transform itself, and you haven't ordered a single orbital bombardment. A true conqueror would have destroyed everything rather than lose control. Vex felt something crack inside his chest. She was right. He had the power to destroy every rebellious world, every singing crowd, every human troublemaker. But he hadn't used it. What do you want from me? He asked, his voice barely above a whisper. I want you to ask yourself a question, Maria said. In all your years of conquest, have you ever been happy? The question hit Vex like a physical blow. Happiness was not a concept that existed in Vorthon society. Success, efficiency, dominance, these were the only values he had ever known. I do not understand the question. Then maybe it's time to learn, Maria smiled. Your people are already learning. They're discovering that there's more to existence than endless war. They're finding joy in creation instead of destruction. They're learning to hope. Vex looked at the monitors again. The crowds in the plaza weren't just singing now, they were dancing. Vorthon citizens were embracing each other, sharing food, creating art with their bare hands. For the first time in his life, War Supreme Vex wondered what it would feel like to be part of something beautiful instead of something terrible. What happens now? He asked. Maria smiled. Now we teach your empire how to build instead of destroy, how to grow instead of conquer, how to be happy instead of just successful. Outside, the singing grew louder. and the Vorthon Empire took its first steps toward becoming something entirely new. The Vorthon High Command had never called an emergency session before. In 3 years of galactic conquest, they had faced every form of resistance the galaxy could offer and crushed them all. But now, for the first time, War Supreme Vex sat at his obsidian table surrounded by confused and frightened officers. "Explain to me," Vex said, his voice cold as space itself, "how we lost an entire invasion fleet to a primitive species." War Leader Drex shifted uncomfortably. "War Supreme, the humans do not fight like other species. They ignore all established rules of warfare. They target non-military infrastructure. They corrupt our communication systems. They even weaponize entertainment." "Entertainment?" Vex's 4 eyes narrowed to slits. "They broadcast music and comedy directly into our soldiers' helmets. Our forces begin laughing. Some refuse orders. Others ask questions about the purpose of conquest." Drex paused. 3 entire battalions have requested transfer to agricultural duties. War Supreme Vex had lived for 200 years and conquered 47 species. He had never heard anything so ridiculous. "You are telling me that humans defeated our forces with jokes?" "Not just jokes, War Supreme. They turn everything into a weapon. Their mechanics modify our own equipment and use it against us. Their teachers study our psychology and exploit our weaknesses. Their farmers poison our food supplies. Their children hack our defense networks." "Children?" A 12-year-old human named Bobby Smith broke through our primary firewall using what he called basic programming tricks. He left a message saying our security was worse than his school's Wi-Fi. On Earth, the transformation was complete. What had been a peaceful world 3 weeks ago now hummed with the focused energy of a species at total war. Admiral Hayes stood in the Global Command Center, watching data streams from across the galaxy. "Status report," he said to Colonel Park, his chief of operations. "Sir, our deployment is exceeding all projections. We now have human personnel on 47 worlds, 17 space stations, and 6 major shipping routes. The Vorthons are experiencing systematic failure across multiple sectors." Hayes nodded. This was exactly what he had expected. "Breakdown by specialty?" "Engineers are reverse engineering Vorthon technology and improving it. Teachers are developing psychological warfare campaigns targeting Vorthon morale. Farmers are disrupting their food production networks. Programmers have turned their own computer systems against them. Musicians are broadcasting rebellion anthems to conquered populations." "And the artists?" Colonel Park smiled. "The artists are having the most fun. They've convinced 3 Vorthon worlds that their war leaders are actually comedy performers. Morale is at 0%. Meanwhile, on the conquered world of Xerion Prime, something unprecedented was happening. Lisa Chen, the former history teacher, walked through the slave camps where Altarian civilians had been held for 2 years. She carried nothing but a simple tablet and her teacher's instincts. "Tell me about your culture," she said to Elder Morn, one of the Altarian prisoners. "Culture?" Morn's voice was bitter. "The Vorthons destroyed our culture. They forbid our language, our traditions, our stories." "They forbid them," Lisa agreed. "But did they destroy them?" Morn's eyes sparked with understanding. "No. We remember." "Then, teach me, and I'll teach you something the Vorthons never learned." "What is that?" Lisa smiled. "How to fight back." Within hours, the slave camps were buzzing with activity. Lisa had done what she did best. She had turned students into teachers. Altarian prisoners began sharing their suppressed culture with each other, but also with the Vorthon guards who had been forced to watch them. The guards, bred for obedience, but never taught to think critically, found themselves fascinated by Altarian poetry and philosophy. For the first time in their lives, they began asking questions. Why do we conquer? What is the purpose of endless war? Are we happy? At the same time, Tom Bradley was working his magic in a Vorthon manufacturing facility. The mechanic from Detroit had spent 3 days studying Vorthon production methods before implementing his first improvement. "You see," he explained to the confused Vorthon overseer, "your assembly line is designed for maximum efficiency. But efficiency isn't the same as effectiveness. I do not understand the difference. Tom grinned and flipped a switch. The production line began manufacturing Starship engines exactly as designed, but with one tiny modification. Each engine would work perfectly for exactly 37 hours before experiencing catastrophic failure. Efficiency means making things fast and cheap, Tom explained. Effectiveness means making things that actually work when you need them to. The overseer watched his production numbers climb and was pleased. He had no idea that every ship being built would soon become a floating tomb. In space, Jake Morrison had turned the Vorthan communication network into his personal playground. The programmer had not only hacked their systems, but had convinced their computers that he was actually a high-ranking Vorthan official. "Attention all Vorthan fleets," his fake orders read. "New directive from High Command. All ships are to maintain radio silence and proceed to coordinates, deep space. This is a surprise attack on human home worlds. Maintain secrecy at all costs." Dozens of Vorthan ships dutifully flew off into empty space, where they would spend weeks waiting for targets that didn't exist while burning through their fuel supplies. Dr. Emily Foster had moved beyond biological warfare into psychological terrorism. The biochemist had developed what she called happiness gas, a harmless chemical compound that made Vorthan soldiers experience joy and contentment. "The thing about Vorthans," she explained to her assistant, "is that they've been bred for aggression and obedience. They've never experienced simple happiness. When they do, their entire worldview collapses." Exposed Vortan troops began laying down their weapons and asking strange questions like, "Why don't we have art?" and "When was the last time anyone thanked me for my work?" Some started making friends with their prisoners. Others began writing poetry. But perhaps the most devastating attack came from an unexpected source. David Park, the musician, had discovered that Vorthan military discipline depended on constant propaganda broadcasts. He had hijacked their entire entertainment network and replaced it with something far more dangerous: hope. Instead of propaganda about Vorthan superiority, conquered populations across the galaxy were hearing messages about freedom, dignity, and the possibility of change. More importantly, they were hearing from each other. Altarians spoke to Centaurians. Nereids shared stories with Keepers. For the first time, the conquered peoples realized they were not alone. Rebellions sparked on 17 worlds simultaneously. Not organized military uprisings, but something far more dangerous: ordinary people deciding they deserved better treatment. War's Supreme Vex watched his empire crumble from his command throne. Reports flooded in from every sector: production, facilities failing, troops refusing orders, conquered populations singing seditious songs, ships disappearing into deep space. "How many humans are there?" he demanded. "Intelligence suggests 200,000 deployed across our territory," his aide replied. 200,000? Vex could not believe it. "We have millions of soldiers, thousands of ships, resources, from 100 worlds. How can 200,000 primitive beings cause such chaos?" His aide hesitated. "War Supreme, I believe we have misunderstood what humans are." "Explain." "We assumed they were soldiers, but our intelligence was wrong. They are not soldiers, they are problem solvers. Each human has spent their entire life learning to identify problems and fix them, and they have identified us as a problem." Vex felt something he had never experienced before: fear. "What do you recommend?" "War Supreme, I recommend we negotiate. Surrender before they solve us completely." On Kepler 7, General Kane received a priority transmission from Admiral Hayes. "General, we're receiving communication attempts from the Vorthan High Command. They want to discuss terms." Kane looked out at the transformed planet around her. Human ingenuity had turned a battlefield into a workshop, a laboratory, and a school all at once. Aliens and humans worked side by side, sharing knowledge and building something entirely new. "Terms?" Kane laughed. "Admiral, I don't think they understand. We haven't been fighting a war. We've been conducting an intervention." "An intervention? The Vortans are addicted to conquest. Their entire society is built around it, but like any addiction, it can be treated. Kane watched as a group of former Vorthan soldiers learned to plant crops alongside Altarian farmers. We're not trying to defeat them. We're trying to cure them. The galaxy held its breath as the most powerful military force in known space prepared to surrender to a species that had never fought a galactic war before. But humans had done something no one expected. They had treated war not as a battle to be won, but as a problem to be solved. And they were very good at solving problems. 6 months after the first human shuttle had landed on Kepler 7, Ambassador Krell stood in the transformed capital plaza of Dominus. Where once black towers had stretched toward the sky like monuments to conquest, gardens now bloomed between buildings that had been converted into schools, hospitals, and community centers. The change was so complete that Krell sometimes wondered if he had imagined the old Vorthan Empire entirely. "It's beautiful, isn't it?" a voice said behind him. Krell turned to see General Kane approaching, but she no longer wore a military uniform. Instead, she dressed in simple civilian clothes, a tablet in her hand filled with agricultural reports from across the former empire. "General Kane," Krell said, still struggling to process what he was seeing. "I received your message about the final status report." "Actually, it's just Kane now," she smiled. "My military commission ended 3 days ago. I'm going back to my farm in Iowa. The corn won't plant itself." Krell's antennae twitched with confusion. "But surely Earth needs you to oversee the occupation forces." Kane laughed, the sound echoing off the converted buildings around them. "Occupation forces? Ambassador, there are no occupation forces. There never were. I do not understand." "Walk with me," Kane said, leading him through the plaza where Vorthans and former slaves worked side by side, planting flowers and sharing meals. "Let me explain what really happened here." They passed a group of children, Vorthan, Altarian, Centaurian, and human, playing together while their parents attended a workshop on sustainable farming. Tom Bradley was there, teaching former weapons engineers how to build water purification systems. "You see," Kane continued, "everyone expected this to be a war, but wars have winners and losers. What we did here was different. What do you call it? An intervention. The Vorthans weren't evil, Ambassador. They were sick. Their entire civilization was built around a single toxic idea. That conquest was the only path to security. We helped them discover other options." They stopped at a bulletin board covered with job postings. Former Vorthan soldiers were advertising their services as teachers, farmers, builders, and artists. War leader Drex, who had once commanded invasion fleets, was now offering guitar lessons. "But how?" Krell asked. "How did you convince an entire empire to abandon everything they believed?" Kane smiled. "We didn't convince them of anything. We just showed them alternatives. When people are given the choice between creating and destroying, most choose to create. The Vorthans just forgot they had that choice." Across the plaza, Jake Morrison was packing up his equipment. The programmer had spent the last month training Vorthan technicians to use their communication networks for education. Instead of propaganda, his job was done. "Jake," Kane called out, "heading home?" "Yeah," he grinned. "My company offered me a promotion for all the systems integration work I did here. Turns out hacking galactic empires looks great on a resume." Krell watched as Jake walked away, whistling a tune that sounded suspiciously like one of David Park's rebellion songs. "He is just leaving?" "They all are." Kane nodded. "Tom's going back to his garage. Lisa's returning to her classroom. Emily's got a research position at a university. David's planning a concert tour. Apparently, half the galaxy wants to hear the music that brought down the Vorthan Empire. But who will maintain order? Who will ensure the peace continues?" Kane gestured around the bustling plaza. "They will. The people, Vorthans and their former subjects, working together to build something better than either had before." As if to prove her point, War Supreme Vex approached them. The former tyrant looked different, younger somehow, despite his years. He wore simple clothes and carried a watering can, having just finished tending to the memorial garden that honored victims of the Empire's conquests. "Ambassador Krell," Vex said, his voice gentle. "I wanted to thank you." Thank me. Krell stepped back in surprise. For bringing the humans to us. For 3 centuries, I lived in a cage of my own making, believing that conquest was strength. The humans taught me that true strength comes from building, not destroying. Kane watched their interaction with satisfaction. Vex has been working with the Galactic Council to establish reparation programs for conquered worlds. Voluntary programs, funded by converting military resources into humanitarian aid. Krell felt his mind struggling to process this new reality. And the other war leaders? Most are participating, Vex replied. Those who couldn't adapt to the new reality were given early retirement to remote agricultural worlds. They seem happier growing vegetables than commanding fleets. Dr. Emily Foster walked past, deep in conversation with a group of Vorten scientists. They were discussing plans to terraform several dead worlds using biotechnology originally developed for weapons. Dr. Foster, Kane called out, how's the restoration project going? Emily looked up, her face bright with excitement. Better than expected. It turns out Vorthon bioweapons technology is incredibly effective at creating life when you reverse the process. We should have 3 new garden worlds within a decade. After she moved on, Krell turned to Kane with growing amazement. Your people, they're treating this like any other job, aren't they? Because that's what it was, Kane replied. A job that needed doing. The galaxy had a Vorthon problem, so we solved it. Now the job is done, and everyone goes back to their regular lives. They walked to the edge of the plaza where a monument had been erected. It wasn't dedicated to human victory or Vorthon defeat. Instead, it bore a simple inscription, to the power of second chances. Ambassador, Kane said, can I ask you something? Of course. When you first came to Earth, what did you expect to happen? Krell considered the question. I expected you to send soldiers. I expected battles, victories, defeats. I expected a war. And what did you get? Krell looked around at the transformed world surrounding them. Former enemies were sharing meals. Children were playing together, and everywhere he looked, people were building instead of destroying. I got something I never imagined was possible, he said slowly. I got peace. Real peace. Not just the absence of war. Kane nodded. That's the thing about humans, Ambassador. We don't just fight wars. We solve problems. And the biggest problem in the galaxy wasn't the Vorthon Empire. It was the idea that conquest was the only way to achieve security. A shuttle descended from orbit, displaying Earth's peaceful blue and white colors. Kane's ride home. Will we see humans in galactic affairs again? Krell asked. Probably not unless someone else needs help, Kane replied, shouldering her small travel bag. We're not interested in ruling anyone or building our own empire. We just want to tend our farms, teach our children, and maybe explore a few more stars. But what if another threat emerges? Kane paused at the shuttle ramp and smiled that same predatory smile that had once terrified Krell. But now he understood it differently. It wasn't the smile of a predator. It was the smile of someone who enjoyed solving difficult problems. Ambassador, let me give you some advice. If another species out there is thinking about conquering the galaxy, they should know one thing. Humanity is still here. We're still farming, teaching, building, and learning. We still turn our entire civilization into a problem-solving machine. When we need to. She stepped into the shuttle, then called back. But we really hope we don't need to again. We've got crops to plant. As the shuttle lifted off, carrying Kane back to her peaceful farm, Krell reflected on what he had witnessed. The galaxy had asked Earth for 50,000 soldiers following established military protocols. Instead, they had received something unprecedented. 200,000 humans who had treated the conquest of a galactic empire as a temporary career change. The Vorthon Empire was gone, but something better had taken its place. A loose confederation of worlds bound together not by conquest, but by the shared understanding that building was better than destroying. And somewhere in the galaxy, other species were learning a valuable lesson. If you ever needed help, you could ask the humans. But you should be very careful what you asked for because you just might get humanity unleashed. In the end, the galaxy hadn't just gained peace. It had learned that the most dangerous species in the universe wasn't the one with the biggest weapons or the strongest armies. It was the one that could turn teachers into strategists, mechanics into saboteurs, and farmers into liberators. It was the species that solved problems instead of creating them. And they were very good at solving problems.